Thanks, M-Dog. Okay, Trump news, really? Was it Trump news or is it, it was literally mid-session? This is why when someone asks me like, oh, what about news and things that come into play? It's like, yes, but I swear they literally always do that shit intentionally. It's never, ever, ever a coincidence. That's what I said at 9:30 this morning. Mid-session is 1:15 p.m. Look at what they did at 1:15 p.m. Do you see that? Look at what they did at 1:15. They literally cleared the channel. And I had said earlier too that they'll probably do it. They'll probably give us a new stick. That's exactly what they ended up doing. And that's been kind of the theme for this whole week, is when they need to take out certain areas, they just kind of stick it through. Well, it was that single stick with news right at mid-session, but more importantly, right at 7444, 7449. Okay, like that's the crazy part, is they took it out right at the channel at that time. I don't give a shit that it was news. I care about the price that they took out at that time. That's crazy. Because either way, with or without Trump's news, I needed 7444 to be taken out at 115. Does that make sense? Whether it was him tweeting or not, that area is the price that had to break at that time. 7470 getting triggered here. We're still on track to trigger our targets today. 7474, 7478 is going to be probably the biggest area for clearance today. And that's what could give us some probabilities of getting some zone retracements back over 7488. 749493 is going to be huge. Same with 7506 to 10 and 12. I'm not sure if we can trigger the full core ranges to 7420s today, but because we stalled core last night and opened at core, there could be some probabilities there. I think a lot of it's going to depend on what they do over the next 15 to 20 minutes. We do have a bit of an expansion period happening right now between this period here until roughly like 157 through 230. So market is in a very good position to clear if they wanted to. So they're in a good spot right now. If they really, really want to expand this, they have to keep moving right here. Okay. That put the calls for tomorrow in a really good position. Even today's calls off 7411 holds. Seven four seven four triggering. That's still not high enough. We need closer to like 7.6, 7.8 area. Does the market always above 74, 77, 74, 81 today? I'm going to mark this too. I was already watching 230, 232, but 236 is linked to today's lows. No, that's not true. That's not true. Anything above 7.4, I would say 7.8, 7.481 is an expansion for today. Okay, but for the week, that's not true. We still had odds this week of 75.10, 75.12, and so on. We expand mainly, I think, if we break above 75.10, 12. Okay? But for today, no. 6.9, anything above 6.9 is not an expansion. Anything above 7.881 is technically an expansion. But use like the core ratios to have an idea. So if it's like off lows today, then you'd be looking at our 66-point ratios here. Okay, so these are 66-point ratios right here. So what would be your ratios that you'd use, Arun? This is where I think you struggle a little bit. So if we opened at core today, okay, this is how you can tell if it's expanding or not. Okay, what ratios would you use here? And this is how I know it's going to be aligned to our spots. What would you use? These, right? Core ratios? No. For now, to know if you're expanding. You've already hit more than 115 points off weekly lows, right? 7469 minus 115 is 7354. Okay, so off weekly lows, you've already hit that. Okay, that's a core break. Off today's lows, what kind of area would you be at if you break 66 points? Obviously here, right? What areas should those align with? Our spots, right? 7477, I'm just gonna copy paste here, 7479. So if you add 72, 75, 78 points from today's lows, you're probably gonna get those exact ratios. Okay, so that's how I know that our balance zone is calculated. These are the perfect spots to get these 71, 70, do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so above here, then we can assume that this could start expanding, okay? Maybe to the zone. Okay. Does that make sense? Like you'd be looking at like 8.5, 8.6, basically like these upper core ratios with some odds of 8.8. Because 79 points here is going to be the zone potentially around 7.4, 8.7, 8.8 off lows. Yeah, this is measuring off real-time lows, okay? But if we're going to measure off the high or the open today, right here, okay, that's how you can start expanding. If you start breaking like these ratios, okay? Because then at that point, you're likely to get like the max core ranges on the session today. And if you get max core ranges on the session today, you're back at all-time highs. Do you get what I'm saying? And especially off session open, session close, real-time open, real-time, like we don't know obviously yesterday's like real, but today's real-time close yet, but like you get the point. So off session open, session close, this is what I was talking about earlier. These areas here, okay? Where did they close? Here, okay? What kind of areas would these net us if we hit max core ratios? Here, these areas, up in here in the 40s. Do you see what I'm saying? That's an expansion. So that I would consider an expansion off like today's session open, session close. Okay, 107-point ratios. 107-point ratios off of the session open, session close is exactly all-time highs. Can you write that down? And we've been working with 107-point ratios a lot lately. 107 points, 106 points has been what's triggering. Okay, so 107 points off session open, session close is all-time highs. Okay, that's an expansion. That is the difference. Okay, it's not that these areas here are not an expansion. Does that make sense, Arun? I really want you guys to get better at core days, core opens, like core closes. I feel like that's the only reason why I had some good probabilities for today, but also because we held that balance zone. Okay, but this balance zone is also linked to these ratios because it can also still get us these areas in here. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Whereas like off of today's open and these closing points, these are probably closer to like 44-point ratios. Okay, yeah, they are. But once you start breaking 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, then you're at the 80s. Okay? Whereas off of our session, real-time session open, these are the 52, 53. Do you see it? Remember I was saying earlier, we're probably going to first work with 52 to 55 to 58-point ratios off open. Once we break those 22 to 25-point ranges off open, which is what they did right here. When they broke, right? When they broke these ranges, that was them breaking 25, 22 points. That was this. Okay? So what they're doing now is they're off opening range. They're testing those 52 to these basically. Okay, numbers in here. To 56 to 59. Okay. Do you see how our 7-9 areas would trigger? Do you see it? 54 points is 7-8. So yes, now do you understand why 7-8, 8-1, 8-4, these are the more bigger structural breaks. They're a multi-confluence area too, okay? That's why I don't think technically 6-9 expands us. I think this area expands us, like I was saying yesterday on the report and this weekend. So do you get what that means? You don't actually have to break 7-4-8-8 to actually test 75-11, 75-21. All you actually have to break is this. Does that make sense? You don't actually have to break into the zone to tag that. All you actually have to do is break these areas here. Hopefully that makes sense. Like, I don't know what other way I can explain that, but that's insane. My calls went from like 60 cents to almost 250. That's crazy. Yeah, so then that could give you like a much bigger extension or expansion on the week. And then from a weekly basis, from weekly open, weekly lows, which I still think are important to measure. Do you see how we're hitting 71 points here now from weekly open? And it helps too, because that's kind of where we held today anyway. So, right, like these areas. But if they break 107, 115 points off weekly open, it's going to be 75.20s again. Okay, off weekly lows, which is our extremely calculated spot at 73.54. These would be our 173-point ratios, 174-point ratios. That's half of 346. Okay, but if we're working with core ratios, here's the trick question. Nice. These are calls for tomorrow, so I'm actually surprised they even moved that much. But if we're working with tomorrow, M-Dog, are you in the Discord? If we're working with core ratios, we wouldn't really look for 346. We'd look for 410, 420, 426, 430, right? So what would half of that range be? And we've talked about this before. I just feel like you guys often And this is what could set us up for those ranges, like 215, 214, okay? That's how we could get those much wider ranges, right? Or even like the 182, 183, like a 413 point ratio, half of that range would be like 206. Those are the 50s. That's what keeps those probabilities alive from like a max like range perspective, okay? Remember how I said the 31st is tracking? Initially like 182, 198, 214, 230. Okay, so if they actually were to break 182 points from these weekly lows, you'd be breaking around 3.6. If they break 198, you'd be breaking around the 52. If you break around 206, you're breaking around 59. Do you see what I'm saying? If you break around 214, you're breaking around 75.70. That's how you get like those big core breaks. If you hit max range, then you're getting 7584.50. Okay, these are obviously bigger areas, but it's just so that you understand like the correlation between the two. This is also 50% of the range off this sell-off stick here. But anyway, I think we have pretty good odds of getting to core, especially because they're breaking these areas at these points in time. That's an insane move. I picked up some daily contracts too at 40 cents, and they've already printed $1.60 just on this last leg from here. These are the very important points in the day, guys. They're clearing 7471, 7474, 7478, 7482 here. What would really increase odds of expansions this afternoon, especially if they started breaking range here before too? Even using base theory. Like I said, this is going to be the period if they really want to start expanding this. I don't know why I deleted these marks here. In between here. If they really wanted to start expanding this, what would they have to do? Yeah, they could try getting into the zone. Especially since we have this period here at 232 to 236. I took off some of the dailies here just in case. I still have almost the full position for tomorrow. The only time I took any contracts off is I took one off when we tagged 4-4 just in case they stalled. But I still have full position for tomorrow off 74.11 holds. You could definitely take some off here though if you'd like. I did cover half of those 744s though, just because obviously those are those are very risky at the 74, 78 to 82. I was just looking at this. So for 159, that's not a bad close, but 43 or 7474, I would have preferred at least 7778. So they did take it back up at 2, but 74 still kind of leans towards retesting like 66, 69, if that makes sense. It's not a terrible spot, but it could definitely start recycling some of these ranges. And since we have odds until 230, 232, 236, they could digest a little bit here because you have to remember that we've never triggered these areas yet. I think I'm going to end the stream, guys, and actually have something to eat since I've been streaming on Discord for the last like 2 hours, and make something to eat, and then maybe I'll stream like the last hour and a half of the day. I'll be back for the 2:30 period until close, but I'm going to take a 30-minute break, okay? You can manage appropriately. I took most of the dailies off just because obviously this is a big spot for us, but just in case they make it pinnable in these core ranges today, this last hour and a half to 2 hours of the day, okay? We still have some of these odds on the table for like 9, 4, 12, but I would just use some caution here if you're trading same day expiration. I left 3/4 of my position for tomorrow's contract since I had some good entries off our neutral holds there on that one, but I would still use some caution, I guess, for the ones expiring tomorrow. Maybe not as much, but these holding off these extremely calculated spots, this area here, like that's insane. So I felt pretty good about that. I just didn't like how they kept stalling 4/4, which is why I did tomorrow's expiration for the majority of my contracts. But this is definitely an area, guys, that they could digest. These are huge areas, guys. Make sure you covered at least something. Okay, I'll be back.